What to do if you can't find a book you want to read? Well, one Winnipegger started an online bookstore. Valerie loved to read growing up in Kenya, but soon she realized that many stories were not being told, stories that she wanted to read. So she launched an online bookstore just before the pandemic hit. It's called Tusome Books. Tusome means let us read in Swahili. We spoke with Valerie this afternoon. Valerie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Valerie.
So tell us, what stories did you feel were missing from the books that you read?
I felt like we were not getting a lot of books by marginalized populations were not getting as much visibility as I felt was needed, because we would end up reading a lot of books from specific places and forgetting about people whose voices are already being silenced or made quiet.
And those stories are really important. How would you describe the selection of the books that you now offer that cover those topics?
So I carry books from 3 regions, so from Africa, Asia, and Middle East. And then I also have books by Indigenous authors here in Canada. In addition to that, I try to make sure to include books by other marginalized groups like the LGBT community, and books on disability, and books that cover chronic illnesses as well.
Now, as you just mentioned, you represent Black authors, Indigenous authors, LGBTQ people living with disabilities. Why is it so important to bring those books forward?
Because I think we do live in a world we live in a country that's very diverse. All these people do exist in our population, and I think it's important to make sure that every voice is heard, because that's how people feel seen and validated.
And what does it mean to you personally as well?
As a person of color, and also just because I came from a different country, it's important for me that people try to, not only know about Africa and Kenya from seeing ads of, like those nonprofit ads where you see a little child who doesn't really have any clothes on. Like there are a lot more stories about Africa and about Kenya than that. And it's important for people to get the holistic picture and not just little snippets.
Now, you started this up just before the pandemic hit at the end of 2019. How has business been with the pandemic in mind?
So I don't really have a point of reference, unfortunately, because as you said, I started just before the pandemic. That was in November of 2019. But I can't really complain because I've had steady book purchases all through. I think it's mostly because people, when you're at home, you're looking for things to do, or you're getting back to old hobbies that you may have neglected. So it's been a positive experience.
Definitely. And now, what kind of response have you been hearing from your customers?
So a lot of people are saying that had it not been for them, stumbling upon Tusome Books, they wouldn't have read certain authors or certain stories. And I'm hearing some people saying, that they're looking forward to reading more books by those authors, or looking for similar kind of stories, which I think is good. It's great.
That's a wonderful response. Now, a report by BookNet Canada says sales of anti-racism and social justice books jumped by 955% from May to June last year. What effect do you think you've seen in sales for you?
At my bookstore, I have a section for special orders. So anytime people come onto Tusome Books and they don't find books that they wanted to pick up, they make the request through me and I order them. Most of those books are usually issues like Black authors or books about Black people, and then also a lot of social justice issues. So I would say that report is, fairly accurate.
For sure. Valerie, thank you so much for speaking with us today. This sounds like a fantastic ordeal.
Thank you.
Valerie is the owner of Tusome Books. It's an online bookstore that specializes in books by African, Asian, and Middle Eastern and Indigenous authors. And she also specializes in sourcing books that affect marginalized communities. Now, to learn more, you can go to her website at www.tusomebooks.com.